At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast is now on YouTube. Go on YouTube and search Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast and click that subscribe button to never miss an episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. And we are definitely going to hold to that word. I am one of your hosts this week. It's good old wrestling Chris G. And on the other line with me today is my lost brother, good old Dougie Fresh. Dougie, man, how you doing?
I'm right here. I ain't lost.
Oh, man. And today, everybody, as you saw in the description and when you click this download button, we are doing an impromptu Pokemon the Movie Secrets of the Jungle, which was released last Friday, October 8th. Doug, how are you feeling about this, man?
I'm excited. We don't usually get the opportunity to do a lot of like fresh content. So when this like popped up as, gonna be released, you're like, depending on what we're doing, we should think about doing it. And then, you got itchy and had to watch the freaking
Japanese version
because, heaven forbid you wait a couple days.
I watched both. So I watched the Japanese version and I watched the American version. Very, very similar. Slight differences, but overall, very, very much so the same exact movie. So almost word for word.
I would imagine.
So. And they kept the biggest plot hole of the movie in the movie, which we will go over, that I was honestly shocked that they kept that scene in. You know what scene I'm talking about, right?
Well, you'd think so.
The biggest plot of the entire movie. And I thought with them bringing it over here to the U.S. that they were going to switch it up a little bit. With what the movie actually goes over. And I was happy as shit to see that they kept it in there and that they didn't change it at all. And the basis of the Japanese movie really did translate over to the English version that we just got this past week. But this movie actually released around Christmas it was supposed to release on, let's see. It was supposed to release on July 10th of 2020, but of course, due to COVID and everything that was happening with COVID, it was released on U.S. Christmas Day, December 25th in Japan. So, what a nice Christmas gift for all the people that live out in Japan, Doug.
Yeah, that is a nice gift, and I imagine they probably promoted the heck out of it.
I'm sure they did. And in Japan, I know I like to give the Japanese translation, but there is no real translation. It's just called Pocket Monsters, the movie, Coco. So short, sweet, and to the point. And I think that's the shortest that a Japanese title of Pokemon has been, I think, in the entirety of us doing this show. Just one word, Coco.
especially later.
I know.
The black and white episodes. Those are like novels at this point.
They tell you the whole movie or the whole TV show in 3 sentences. So, but yes, everybody, this is, like I said, an impromptu movie. You're probably surprised if you saw this on your feed, and thank you for hitting that download button. We did tweet this out a week in advance last week to let everybody know that we are going to be doing this movie on a special Wednesday that you're listening to this on October 13th. And the reason for that is because Tuesdays are our recording day. So we're literally recording this and we're putting it out. Like basically, once we're done recording, I'm adding the music and it's out there. It's going live, Doug.
Is it going live? Are we waiting until midnight to push it, or I mean, is it like
I mean,
as
as long
quick as
as
you can turn it around kind of
it's
thing?
as quick as I can turn it around. If I'm done before midnight, then it will launch at midnight. But if it's
If
not,
we're not done before midnight, I'm going to be done before midnight.
this is not going to be a three. Well, I'm saying that now and watch it be, but
It
hopefully
better
this is not going to be a
fucking
repeat
not be.
of Mewtwo Strikes Back. Everybody, hopefully we'll try to trim some of the fat down.
Hopefully, like I say, I'm out of here at a certain point. Not even going to say goodbye. I'm just leaving.
So yes, as quick as I can turn it around is as quick as it's going to come out for all of you folks. And um, a nice little Easter egg I accidentally dropped for you, everybody.
I was
For
wondering if we were going to touch on it. I wasn't gonna blow up your spot.
so as everybody knows, our podcast has a pretty extensive backlog that when I upload the episodes after I finish editing them, they're just put on a timer and they're released when they're released. And my dumbass forgot to um, take it down, the latest black and white episode. So as of the time, and I'm sure there's more, I'm sure there was a little, maybe about maybe 300 of you that actually got to listen to the latest black and white episode. I'm sorry that it was taken down for those that were not able to catch it, but those that are 100% subscribed, apparently you could have downloaded it all the way up until 12 o'clock noon Central Time yesterday. So you had half a day to listen to that episode, but that episode will be officially dropping next Tuesday. So
So if you were one of the handful that um, has your notifications on properly, which I have to give a quick shout out to Apple on one of their more recent updates. I think whatever their new OS is, 15 or whatever the fuck, they've really kind of handled the podcast notifications to the point where I'm actually getting notified when a new episode drops.
oh,
So like it was there, and I didn't even think about it because it's like, oh, it's Tuesday. So I just, I quick grabbed it and checked it out, and everything was good. And then you're like, yeah, I fucked up. So if you were one of those people that saw it yesterday and gave it a listen, we would appreciate it if when it drops again next week, if you would at least download it again and just scrub through it. I mean, heaven forbid you don't have to listen to it twice. But every little click counts.
yes.
I mean, I'm gonna do it twice.
Well, thank you, Doug.
You're right.
So, but yeah, everybody, next week, the next episode of Black and White will be premiering next Tuesday, 6 days from today. You are not getting a Kanto episode. We are going to continue the Kanto episodes next Friday. So next week we will be back on normal schedule. This is just a impromptu Wednesday night movie that we're doing. And boy, oh boy, is this an adventure that we're about to go through. But I'm happy because this movie is it's very bright. It's very kind of straight to the point, and there's not too many real like secrets or anything that there's not so much information like there was for Mewtwo Strikes Back that we can go over. This is literally like a 90-minute Pokemon episode in a
Yeah,
way.
I would say that's fair.
So
Say that's more than fair, actually.
as we were saying before, this was released on December 25th, 2020 in Japan. And here in the States, it was released last Friday, this past Friday, October 8th, 2021. And of course, we're going to go with the US date. So, Dougie, my man, go ahead because you're going first this week. And what is your date for October 8th this
So I could have been a basic bitch, and I could have just talked about because Friday was a day was the first day of, I believe, National League playoffs this year. So I could have just talked about the first couple games and just, moved on, which would have meant you went first. Um, but seeing as those weren't particularly noteworthy games, being that they were just a pair of game ones, I didn't talk about them. So what I did do was I did a quick little dive. First, I went back in our catalog because we had covered this date previously. Well, you went back and I was on the call. Um, so I found out that on this day in 1971, John Legend, fuck me, John Lennon. Nothing against John Legend, just not the guy I'm talking about. Um,
week?
got a hot wife, kind of got some shit takes, but got a hot wife. Um, John Lennon releases his mega hit song "Imagine" on this day,
Ooh, okay.
and I'm sure you heard it. Um,
I'm sure the whole world's heard it.
Imagine all the people. Imagine there's no heaven. Um, you can make an argument that this is the song that got him killed because his assassin heard the song and was a hardcore um, Christian and thought the line about "Imagine there's no heaven" was blasphemous.
Oh,
So he's like, "Well, can't be having that." Um, so he went, flew to New York with a gun, realized you couldn't buy ammunition, had to fly back down to Georgia, get some bullets, come back, scope out the hotel, and he shot. Anyway, that's spinning off into a whole different subject. Well, because I just listened to a podcast on the dude.
oh,
Um,
gotcha. So that's why you're so informative on
hey, now,
it.
yeah, that must be the reason.
Okay.
He's a dope otherwise. Um, but yeah, imagine, it's one of those songs where, it comes on and you're like, okay, I know this song. And of course, a couple of years ago, well, not a couple of years, it feels like it, but like, was it at the start of the pandemic? You had all the celebrities doing that viral video and it got a bunch of backlash because it's like, how dare these fucking
Millennials.
privileged celebrities talk about, coming together and kumbaya shit, and unfortunately Gal Gadot was kind of the, I don't know if she was the focal point or whatever, but she was getting a lot of heat, and this is around the time that had to have been Wonder Woman 84 was coming out, and
It feels like 2 years since that's come out.
I mean, doesn't it though?
I'm telling you, COVID messed all things up. But
I'm
it
saying,
it was good for the streaming world though.
oh, it was great. It still is.
Yeah, I know. I mean, at least one thing, good thing came out of the whole pandemic, and that was you can watch anything on streaming services for the most part. I mean, you still got to go to the movies to go see some of your big blockbusters, but I mean, just as you were saying, we're getting Halloween Kills coming out this upcoming Friday, and it's crazy to be able to talk like recent stuff and it's actually going to happen this week, as opposed to our backlog where we're like, well, you're hearing this in the future, but
Yeah, like the episode that mistakenly went out was recorded the Tuesday after we had gone to uh, Rampage on
get
the,
out, okay.
yeah.
So, well, shit. But yeah, because you reminded me, because I was gonna go and pay money. I had no idea that Halloween Kills was gonna be on Peacock, and now I can sit back in the comfort of my own home and watch it. I can actually tell my cousin up in Wisconsin, hey, the movie you want to see is gonna be free on Peacock, so just watch it there, and I'm sure he will.
I know I am.
I know I am now too. So, all right, and mine's not going to be so elaborate as yours, but mine is 1982, and on this day, October 8th, the Broadway show Cats premiered and ran nearly for 18 years before closing on September 10th of 2000, and it even got years later a movie made on it. And I I was a theater head. Um, like growing up, I've always been like into like theater, and hats off to my mother. I actually got to see this Broadway show, and man, it's one of the very few that I've seen, and it's one that I can slightly remember. Don't ask me any any huge details on it, but um, I was actually able to see Cats, and it was pretty cool. So thank you, Mama. But
No.
yeah, I know I love my mama. But yeah, that was my date, and we have a big adventure that we're getting ready to embark on, Doug. So are you ready?
I think so.
No, no, no. I said, are you ready?
No, you tried this months ago, and I didn't have it then. I ain't having it now.
Damn it. One of these days, I'm going to get you to go, I'm ready.
If you want to do that, you're gonna have to record out of order and do the outro first,
Well,
or well,
those
yeah,
of
do
you in
the
attendance,
intro after the main body, which happens on certain shows.
yes. But for those of you in attendance and the millions listening around the world, Wrestling Chris G and Dougie Fresh brings you the greatest podcast in the world. And I can't tie the rest of it together. But you guys catch the drift. It's a wrestling reference, everybody. For those that are not wrestling fans and grew up in the 90s to listen to DX. So
Remember when we had a wrestling podcast?
I know, remember that? How long ago was that? That's where I got my name from. People are like, your name is Wrestling Chris G, but you're doing a Pokemon podcast.
Not very imaginative child, were you?
So one of these days I'll switch my name up, but it's going to be hard because I kind of got it down with the whole intro and everything. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it because who knows if we ever bring back the wrestling podcast. I'm going to give up my name and some other podcaster is going to take it.
I mean, we could do it, but it's a matter of figuring out a night to do it,
I know the Pokemon
especially
podcast kind of takes up a lot of our time.
especially um, with the with one of the promotions is on a network that's kind of getting shuffled around because TNT decided to. Well, I shouldn't say TNT specifically. I should just say Turner decided to throw their hat in the NHL ring
Yeah, which was bullshit because since when do they have hockey?
this year.
I know. So,
And it was just funny. And I mean, I know we talked about it at the time, but it was funny because that was why their competitor moved off of um, Wednesdays to Tuesdays, was because they were going to get shifted because Universal was going to carry hockey. And then
and now they're not.
Turner jumped in and was like, no, we'll do it.
So, oh, it's going to be different. But, all right. So, let's go ahead, Doug. You ready? Jump into this movie?
I'm about halfway through it. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. So, and no, I'm not going to sing it, everybody. But we start this movie. It has the good old Netflix presents, which is probably gonna be on here for a good old like 8 months until it's out somewhere else. But we hear a bunch of drums and we see a bunch of rain dropping all over the place. And we open the movie with the stars of the movie, the star Pokemon Zarude. And Zarude is in the jungle and it's swinging from its vines. And the song that is being sung is actually by the Zarude, and they're talking about how strong they are. I'll give you a few captions that they are talking about. They say, "We are the strongest. We have no fear. Zarude. We are the voice of the jungle. Lift up your voices. We are the voice of the jungle. Lift up your voices." And during this scene, Zarude is wrecking havoc inside of this jungle. There's a bunch of Pokemon in the jungle that are trying to eat their food. They're enjoying the rain. Zarude is just coming over and they're just literally snatching the food out of these Pokemon's hands and they're eating it, they're stealing, they're being mean, they're being scary to these Pokemon that are out here and they're singing as they do it because they're basically calling themselves the king of the jungle and I got very big Lion King vibes when I was watching the intro to this movie. Doug?
I got Tarzan.
Oh, you got Tarzan. Okay.
Big old Big Bang of Tarzan vibes.
Okay. Okay. I guess Lion King is a bad. Yeah, I
No,
do
it's
get.
not bad. It's not wrong by any stretch. I got like huge like Tarzan energy.
Gotcha. So you want to capitalize on some stuff on this scene, Doug?
So, um, we kind of get the impression that they kind of catch their fill and they're kind of starting to roll out, and then we hear, and then one guy kind of stops and he like looks back and like he's kind of got the he's got something on the wind, and he's like, and one of his buddies is like, okay, come on, we're all going this way, and he's like, right, and then he hears something again, and he just bolts off, and in the distance we can start to hear kind of a cry and it's kind of pardon me, it's getting closer and closer, and like he's jumping through trees, swinging down a vine, and he's in like Rambo vibes, and and now he's on the scent of something, and he's on the wind, and he approaches a waterfall, and you can see he's kind of gingerly approaching something, and he looks over, and we see a baby crying in I mean, I'm going to call it a bassinet, but I'm not confident in it actually being a bassinet.
It's like envision like a space capsule, like that's what it looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah, okay.
So, and like the baby is just like in like a little mini space capsule, and a nice little soft bed, but it looks like the space capsule has seen its last day. It's probably been rummaging around. um Zarude walks over to the space capsule where the baby is, and the baby loves him. And the baby tries to grab for Zarude. Zarude gets scared, and the baby just tilts over in the space capsule, kind of crawls its way out, tries to stand up, but it can't because it hasn't learned how to walk yet. So the baby's just giggling, moving all around, and Zarude basically his first intention was to just leave this little being and just walking away. But as he's walking away, you can see he has second thoughts. He starts looking down, and then all of a sudden, the baby's just on top of him. So apparently, this baby has just lightning speed and just crawled on top of him out of nowhere and just starts pulling the fuck out of its ears. Doug?
Yeah, these babies are elusive. Um, so so the baby's kind of crawling over and knocks over the root, and he kind of loses track of him. And then we look up and we see that he's flying through the air. So the root is trying to track him, trying to track him, he hits a tree,
Face plants.
and then the Zarut thankfully is able to reach out one of its long arms, and the baby falls in, but the baby's kind of squirming and kind of turns himself around and ends up kind of sliding ass first into his nose. And, we get the impression that he's got a messy diaper, and then he's like, oh, what do I do? And then in the next scene, we see that he's flying uh, through the jungle on some vines, and he lands in a canopy, and we see that the baby is fast asleep cradled in his arm, hanging on to his chin,
Yes,
and we
as a way
see
of
that he's
comfort.
you're right, and they're back at the home base of the Zarut.
Yes. And from here, Zarude starts walking down with the baby in its hands, and all of the Zarude that are over there, they're practicing battling, and they're all rallying each other up, but they can smell the baby because the baby obviously has a different type of smell than any of the other Pokemon that are over there. And he walks down, and this is where we get introduced. What should we call this Zarude to kind of differentiate the two, Doug? Uh,
Well, are you talking the one with the baby, or are you talking the elder?
not the elder yet, the mean one, the one that seems like he wants to be the leader of the Zarude pack before the elder.
Well,
So because
freaking
the other one with the baby, his name is Dada Zarude.
the the caption has him identified as Alpha.
Okay, so that's what we'll call him then. Um, the alpha Zarude jumps down from the top of a tree, and Dad Zarude, that's what we're gonna call him because that's what he's referred to in the movie. He's like he's like, I've come to speak to the elder about this, and a bunch of Zarude are just like sniffing around, and they're like, have you forgotten that no one is allowed inside of our territory? And Dad Zarude, and he just starts snarling, and the elder is like, break it up, break it up. It appears you have brought something unusual along with you. And they all bow, and they're like, elder. And he's like, it is a human, correct? And a child too. And everyone's looking up, and they're like, what the hell? A human? Why would you bring a human here? The baby kind of sneezes, and the alpha just looks over at him, and he walks forward. And this is this I had to laugh here because he walks forward to kind of like analyze the baby, but the baby still hasn't been changed, or and the diaper still smells, and he's like, it smells like a stunky's rear end, which is one of the skunk Pokemon.
Ah,
So I had to laugh there that they made that reference. And the elder is basically looking at him. He's like, so tell me, what do you plan on doing with this baby? And Dad Azaru, he's like, I'm not sure. He's like, and everyone's kind of looking at it. He's like, but I'm gonna kind of sum this up so I don't go word for word. But he looks over. He's like, if I leave it, the baby will not survive, and I kind of feel obligated to go and try to find its parents. And the alpha Zarude is like, he's like, are you serious? He's like, if you go and do this, you're out of the pack. And he's like, well, I got to do what I got to do. And he's like, I'm going to take care of this baby and try to find its parents. And Doug, you want to go from this part?
so yeah, he takes off. Obviously, the alpha thinks that that was the wrong decision, and we fade out from the tree, and then we get the pardon me, we get the title sequence of the movie. Um, we kind of see Dada Zaru being the parent, watching over the baby, playing with the baby, rocking the baby. Um, we see the baby growing up. Um, looks like he's kind of fishing a little bit. Um, he finds a skull bat, and like immediately they become like best friends.
Yes.
Um,
One of the main Pokemon characters in the movie.
he's watching, and we see that he's starting to learn to walk, and he almost gets hit by a car, and then him and Dada are up on a roof, and we're watching some fireworks, and the baby's just in awe, and then we're sitting in a field, and um, Dada we're walking through it looks like a laboratory, and he finds a photo, and we have this kind of moment of realization, and um the
We,
kid
we kind of get the realization that the parents are not here. He's looking around, and we do get like a picture. It looks like he picks up a picture, and we kind of see like a hologram moment of the baby with his family.
yeah,
But there's no answers as to where his family is, so he's still on the search for his parents.
and then we the kid falls in love with a blankie, and then the blankie becomes part of Dada's wardrobe. Um, and then we get the title screen, Pokemon Secrets of the Jungle, and then 8 minutes and 40 seconds into the movie, the narrator finally decides to show up.
he seems to kind of take a break in these movies at the beginning, doesn't he?
I'm telling you, it's a nice gig if you can get it.
So this movie actually starts off. We're told that we're in Malafa town, which is a small town surrounded by a jungle, and that we're meeting up with Ash Ketchum and his partner Pikachu. And it looks like Ash has come to this town because he is wanting to go into this jungle to start catching some brand new Pokemon, Doug.
Yes.
And before he can do that, of course, he's on the phone with his mother.
Right. In a Pokemon Center.
Yes, he's in the Pokemon Center. And his mother is going off on him because he doesn't want to talk that much, but his mom is worried about him.
She's like, you're
And
going into a fucking jungle.
and Ash is trying to like run away, and she's like, "One moment," and he was kind of rude. He's like, "What, mom?" And she's like, "Are you sure you're ready?" And he's like, "I'm all set. I'll be fine," like he always tells his mom. And he tries to run away again, and she's like, "Hold it! That attitude worries me the most. What about your potions, extra clothes, and Pikachu's food?" And Ash is being his little 10-year-old self, just dancing around because he wants to leave. He doesn't want to talk to his mom. And he's kind of a dick a little. He's like, "You worry too much, mom." And she's like, "Well, I'm just being your parent. That's what being a parent is all about." He's like, "I hear you. I'm hanging up." And she's like, "There's that attitude again. If anything's bad were to happen to you," and Ash is a dick again. He's like, "Mom, wait a minute. Somebody's calling me. I gotta go. See ya."
Somebody's calling me.
And he completely just hangs up the phone on his mother and runs out the Pokemon Center, and he just starts on his journey in this town, Malafa town, and
He has a good line. He's like, she would have kept us on till tomorrow. She could have.
and he runs out, and as soon as he runs out, you can tell how small this town is, but how huge the jungle is surrounding the town. And it's surrounded by just mountains. Like you can see mountains in the distance. You can see that basically the town that he's in can probably be multiplied by 100 and still not fill this whole entire jungle. Doug?
No, it's what you what I would like what fuck me. It's what I would like to call a postcard town because it's like there's no bad view in the place. Like Ash is just running down the stairs and it's just like views upon views upon views.
Yes.
It's gorgeous.
So you want to go over this next part with the child? I'm not. I know his name, but we're not.
Well, but we don't.
We don't know it yet.
Um,
So you want to go
so
back with the child in the forest?
so we're back. We're in the forest, and looks like the child is leading Dada, and they're sounds like they're going for food because the child says the berries were almost ripe last time, and this is when the Dada finally does call him Coco, so we can start saying that.
Yes.
And he's like, well, they're not going anywhere, which is kind of ridiculous because they are in a forest. So I mean, the food's free for anybody. And then we land, and Coco is met by a handful of Pokemon who are all frantic.
Yes. So the Pokemon are around him, and not only are they frantic, but they're just mad. And dead as a root at this point, just drops down, and he looks at Coco. He's like, "Coco, what's going on?" So I want to preference this movie because we're going to be talking. The Zarude, and while they're in the jungle, only the Zarude and the child are going to be speaking English. The rest of the Pokemon that are in this movie outside of Meowth with Team Rocket are going to just be having their own like regular Pokemon lingo. But Coco turns around and looks at Zarude and he's like, all of these Pokemon are mad. And Zarude kind of sniffs the air and he's like, so that's it. And he starts running in the forest. And as he's running, he stops and he's startled. And he comes over and the camera kind of switches around and it looks like all the food that they were going after has been eaten and it's all over the ground. And the only thing that was left in these berries that looks like it's all over the ground is just maybe a little bit of juice and the nut. Doug?
And we see footprints, which the group of Pokemon seem to be implying belong to Zarude, which is why Dada then has to turn around and say, "Listen, I didn't have anything to do with this," and the pack of Pokemon isn't having any of it. And Dada gets frustrated, and he's like, he basically confronts them, and they scatter basically.
Yes.
And
because he uses the line, he's like, I came down here to eat with my son too. And just kind of just startles these Pokemon. Doug?
right, and so he roars in the face of
Skunky.
him, and um, we hear that Coco is hungry, but then something catches Coco's eye, and he looks at one of the berries on the ground and says, "I have an idea," and then he starts doing tight circles, and he's like, "Well, why don't we make a place where the berries grow?" And it kind of hits Dada over the head. And he's like, "That's not a bad idea." And he's like, "Well, there's seeds in this place, and if we plant it someplace where um, nobody will bother it, we'll have enough food to share with everybody."
Yes. So their plan now is to hide the food so the rest of the Zarude don't bother it. We come in this next scene, we have the introduction of a Cramorant, and Ash, of course, is looking off in the distance in the forest. And look at little Pikachu with its little jungle hat. Like that, Pikachu's so cute. But Ash is like, he's like, I've never seen that Pokemon before. And Cramorant kind of catches wind of Ash and he's like, let's battle it. Pikachu, quick attack. And Pikachu loses its hat. Oh, it has a little backpack on too. And it goes and it flies into Cramorant's mouth. And Cramorant is about to swallow Pikachu whole. And Ash notices this. And he sits there and he's like, Pikachu, use your Thunderbolt. And Pikachu is on the inside and Pikachu's like, Pikachu! Shocks the mess out of Cramorant. Cramorant spits him out. And as Ash is trying to throw the Pokeball, Cramorant flies away. And off into the distance, this is when we get the first glimpse of Team Rocket in this movie. Doug?
Yeah, and what is he? Because what a fucking. So Meowth is almost a little disgusted. He's like, Pikachu could have held back a little bit. And Jesse's like, if that Pikachu held back, we wouldn't want it so bad. And James is like, yeah, but I don't want to think about getting shocked from the inside.
And Meowth is like, it shocks me just thinking about it.
And Team Rocket has Wobbuffet, which makes me. What season was Wobbuffet a thing? Because I was still watching. Yeah, because I was still watching. Was that Orange Island?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Wobbuffet is definitely still a thing. And the next Pokemon, just so you're familiar with it because they don't tell us the names of these Pokemon, but the next Pokemon is a Flapple that you're about to encounter, Doug.
Gotcha.
So, but we're back with Ash. Ash is in the jungle and he runs across a Flapple, which looks like it's a lizard in the shape of an apple, and it flies. And Ash is running
Well,
after it.
didn't you just opened a Flapple not too long ago?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I was going to say that name sounds familiar.
And Ash is running and running and running, and he's trying to catch this Flapple, and Flapple is basically getting away, and he does get away because as Ash is running, he's not watching where he's going, and he trips over a piece of machinery and looks back and sees a whole bunch of people. It looks like at this point that they're mining and that they're testing something over in the water at this point. Doug?
Right. And a researcher comes over and was like, that was quite a tumble. Are you all right? And Ash is like, yeah, but I was chasing after, and he sees that the Flapple was going away, getting away. He's like, ah, shit. And he turns around and does the standard, I'm Ash from Pallet Town. This is my partner Pikachu, and she identifies herself as Shannon, a biotop company researcher.
Yes, and Biotop is the name of the company that she.
Right. So Ash
And
is like, "Oh, what are you out here researching?" Which simple question, but still sounded dumb.
it's not dumb. I would have asked the same thing. What are you out here looking for?
Well, yeah, but what are you out here looking for? What do you wouldn't say researching right back to her.
He's 10, Doug.
I don't care. He's been 10 long enough.
And they she goes off and she's like they're gathering samples of components of the water, and Ash is like, ooh, components. And freaking Jesse, we get back to Team Rocket, who's watching from a distance again, and she's like, that clueless twerp. He's like, as dumb as a fence post. So what are they doing? And then Meowth is like, I'm not sure. And James like, I found it. He's like, we're at the Biotope Company, or no, he's reading off of his tablet. He's like, we at the Biotope Company use cutting edge technology to discover and implement developments that lead to peace and harmony for both people and Pokemon. And Meow, he's like, yeah, that sounds like the real deal. And she's like, who's that? And they tap it, and these tablets must be way in the future because it has a hologram that just shoots out from the tablet, and it has one of your main stars, and his name is Dr. Zed, and he is the team leader of this bio company. And it says that he's in search of water that has healing powers and that he is trying to find it. And they're like, a healing springs is like, does something like that even exist? And Jesse finally gets the bright idea to say, whether it exists or not, let's go over there and find out and see what we can find out for Team Rocket. And Doug?
I want to know why there's such a thing as a goddamn holographic tablet, but Ash still has to go to the Pokemon Center to call his mother.
Ash stays away from the extra big technology because he doesn't want his mom calling him up every 5 minutes.
Well, you could put her on silent.
Do not disturb.
Right.
But
But we go back into the jungle and we see Coco and Dada are planting a seed in a secluded area, and Dada uses some type of attack to
It's
kind of
it's never really said what it does, but it basically helps nature grow.
like it kind of blesses the soil or so in a kind of a roundabout way because it's kind of this gold fleck and
Yes.
a sprout immediately comes up and yeah.
And
So and then they get ready to leave because Dada says, "Well, nothing will be ready to eat for a while."
so it's at this point that a hoot hoot, and you should know hoot hoot, that
Yeah, hoot hoot rings a bell.
from
Well,
the Orange
it's hoot
Islands.
hoot, isn't it? It's
Yes.
not. Yeah.
And hoot hoot comes down, and basically he's talking to Coco, and Coco is like, "Wait a minute, Dada, I'll be right back." And freaking Zarude, Dada Zarude, he's like, Where are you going?" And before he can even get out any more words, Coco is gone, and he starts swinging from the vines again. And Dada Zarude turns around and looks behind him, and he's like, "I shouldn't be at all surprised." And and he's looking at a plant, and he's kind of alluding to that Coco's growing up, and he's not really too much of a little kid anymore. So this next scene, we see all these Pokemon kind of in a frantic moment, and it's at this point that sorry, everybody, that we have two Pokemon that are fighting. A Flygon and a Pangoro, the evolved form of Pacham from the recent Pokemon ventures. If you're playing Pokemon Sword and Shield, it's one of the side quests and one of the DLC. Um, in one of the DLCs that you can download in the game to continue your game. And Flygon is basically getting wrecked, and Coco is trying to separate them, and he can't. And he's trying to separate him as much as like grabbing onto Flygon, and Flygon just swung him off. And he he goes back and he hits a tree trunk, and there's Squovet just sitting there, just eating its little berries. And he's like, Squovet, why didn't you try to stop it? And Squovet has, he's like, nah. I'm not, I'm a little Pokemon. I'm not gonna go
He's
over there and get
he's like
squashed.
you see how big those two dudes are?
So, Coco is sitting here and he's like, well, if Flygon keeps battling, its wounds are going to get worse and it's not going to be able to fly anymore. But these Pokemon are just going at it. And Coco is looking at it, and he throws a berry at Flygon, which gets Flygon's attention. And he's like, "It wasn't me." And he kind of blames it on Squovet, and Squovet's like, "Wait a minute, hold on, no, that was not me." And he jumps into Coco's arms, and Coco just starts running and starts swinging. And this Flygon is fast, like they're zigzagging all through this forest. They even knock into a dot, and C dot just gets hit and it's knocked out. I felt kind of bad for it, but
Yeah, because he was just kind of
he was
trying to
just
live.
chilling.
He,
But Coco jumps over and he jumps off a cliff and he splashes down into this water, and Flygon flies into this water as well and is getting ready to attack Coco. But Coco points at Flygon's wing, and Flygon is healing. His wound is now gone. I mean, his wound is now gone, and it's flying around. He's trying to tell Flygon to be quiet because Flygon's jumping up for joy. It's flying around. It's making a lot of noise, and he's like, "You have to be quiet." Freaking Squovet looks like it was holding its breath, and it's now just exhausted, sitting on top of Coco's head, and he's like, uh, he's like, you're gonna get us caught. And freaking from right behind him, we see Alpha Zarude come into the frame, and he kind of looks down at Coco, and he's like, "They." He's like, "Oh, because Coco was like, he's like, they're gonna find us." And he's like, "They," and he just jumps down. Alpha Zarude starts following him, and Alpha is trying to literally beat some sense into Coco because Alpha Zarude is saying that the spring is off territory. That is our spring. It is not yours, and you know the rules. Doug, you want to go from here?
Which is bullshit because if that spring has rejuvenative powers, um, to be that selfish to cut off the spring from the rest of the Pokemon in the jungle, I mean, I said it earlier, it's bullshit.
Yes.
And I mean, I think we should consider ourselves lucky that something like this exists in this forest and it hasn't been corrupted.
Yes. And from this point, he's Coco is dodging all of Zarude's attacks. Zarude's trying to use its. It looks like it's trying to use like vine whips from its arms to try to whip Coco. And at this point, um, Coco is now on top of this big old tree where all of the main Zarude are from the pack from earlier in the movie, and Coco takes out a string from its sleeves because Coco has these little armbands that the Zarude have on their arms that the vines come out of, and he takes it out and he has a little rock tied to a string and he starts swinging it. And Alpha Zarude kind of takes offense. He's like, "You think um that you can hurt me with that?" And it just sends out an attack, and these green leaves just come flying off of Zarude. And by gosh, I mean, freaking Coco comes down with this string and just whips the mess out of those leaves, dodges it, comes sliding down this tree trunk, and throws his rock with the string attached to it at Zarude. Zarude catches it and tosses over Coco. And at that point, Coco is now defenseless, and he tries to literally punch the shit out of Zarude. And Zarude just catches him by his foot and just brings him over and is holding him upside down. Doug?
Yeah, he's got him. He's basically got him dead to rights, and then um, vines come from off screen, and we find out that it's Dada coming from up under and swings around, lands in front, or I guess in between Coco and Alpha. Um, Sub Alpha, as they're identified in the caption, tries to come up and jump Coco, and
Tackle the mess out.
um, Dada's like, "Look, I understand this was wrong. Um, I'm gonna take my son and we're gonna leave." And then off in the distance, they see the elder, and Dada immediately bows and is like, "I'll make sure this never happens again." And Elder's like, "Well, that's all well and good, but the law is still the law, and you can apologize all you want, but you still trespassed." And
He's like, he
he's
says
like,
you have,
"Leave,"
yeah, you
which
have
is
to leave at
ridiculous
once.
because he was leaving anyway. He knew he messed up, so it's like, all right, you don't gotta call me onto the carpet for something I know I fucked up on. It's like I was leaving already.
And freaking, I want to point out that when Zarude is grabbing Coco to leave, Coco looks over at the original Alpha and just gives him the most ugliest face and growls at him. And Zarude just takes his vine and he leaves. And the elder is seen walking away, and he is sad because the elder knows that this Zarude means no harm, but they have rules in their pact that once you leave, you can't come back. And he even broke it down because we did kind of paraphrase a little bit, but he did break it down and say he's like, once you broke the rule, it's been too long since you've broken the rule, so you can't come back. So it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, and you know, they said it from jump basically when he left. He's like, I'm gonna find this kid's parents. He's like, well, that's noble, but you know you can't come back. And he's like, well, like you said, you know, you got to do what you got to do.
So, uh,
And you know, so they're walking back, and uh, Dada is kind of reading Coco the riot act. He's like, I can't believe you did that. And Coco, in typical kid fashion, is like, well, they're the ones
hoarding everything.
that were hoarding everything, which is a fair point because if they're the ones that are being so territorial about the freaking spring of reincarnation, well, not reincarnation, rejuvenation,
Yes.
um, you know, that's a fair point. And you know, um, Dada's like, yeah, but the Zarudes have to live by the Zarude law, and
Because
you
it
know,
allows
law.
them to live. And he's like, then who will care for the jungle Pokemon? And basically, the Zero is like, he's like, we will.
And you know, Coco's like, yeah, but the jungle's full of such great Pokemon. He's like, you know, and he's kind of hyping up. He hypes up Flygon. He says, it's the one thing I don't like about Netflix. You can't fucking scroll for shit.
All right. So, I mean, it's at this point where he's like, jungle Pokemon are great. Flygon picks fights, but it's so strong, and Ninjask is super fast. And let's see, he's like, Cottony, stick together and don't let go. And dead as he's like, I'm aware. Come down, Coco. It's like, fine. He's like, regardless of anything, um, it's the Zarude and it's their law, and we have to abide by their law. And Coco is like, he's like, then I guess I'm not a Zarude.
And he's like, well, and Dada is like, well, no, because you're a Zarude, and um, Coco's like, well, yeah, but if that's the case, then why can't I understand the law? My skin doesn't look like their skin. My hands don't look like their hands. You know, I can't use any of the moves. He's like, what am I? And Dada is kind of stuck. He's like, what
He's like,
you are.
you
And
are what you are, and
he
freaking
takes
Coco,
off.
yeah, and Coco, in typical teenager stance, he's kind of just trying to. I'm gonna guess that Coco's a teenager. I mean, all signs kind of point that Coco's a teenager because he's really moody in this movie.
Well, yes, but at the same time, um, Coco was kind of hoping for a straight answer and didn't get one.
Yes.
You know, he's like, "What am I?" You know, and he got, you know, you are what you are. What the hell does that even mean?
And freaking Dada, he's like as Coco is storming off into the forest, running away from him, he's like, whenever it comes to Pokemon, he always ignores everything else.
And then we get a flashback, and looks like a,
Rufflet.
a Rufflet has been injured, and Coco's, you know, he's watching over the Rufflet. He's like, you know, please hang in there, please hang in. He's like, you know, and he looks up and he's looking at the tree, and Dada comes down and he says, you know, the Rufflet's not moving, and we've, which didn't really go anywhere because then we're into present, and how do you pronounce that?
Squovat.
Skolvac comes up, and Coco asked him, he's like, what do I look like to you? And Scorbat gives him a quick answer. He's like, "That's not what I mean."
And from here, he starts flying through the forest. And from here, he starts noticing something that he's never seen before. So um, he starts seeing pipes inside of the forest, and he flew by one, and he's like, "What was that?" And as he was looking behind him, and then he looks in front of him, and he flies into an even bigger pipe, kind of knocks himself silly, falls into some water that is streaming down into a waterfall, and Squovat is sitting on top of the pipe, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And freaking Coco drops through the waterfall, and it's at this point that we think Coco is going to drown because he's flowing to the bottom of the waterfall, and we see Ash and Pikachu jump into the frame, and Ash picks up Coco and brings them back onto the land, and Ash is like, "Oh man," he's like, "You're gonna be all right," and freaking Coco is coughing, and Ash is like, "Oh, he's alive." He's like, "Pikachu, we have to help him." And Squovat's over in the distance. I'm mad at Squovat in this scene. Squovat had enough time to go and find himself a freaking berry while his friend was over there getting ready to drown.
Hey man, that's a small rodent. He's not going to have enough breath in his lungs to bring him back. Yeah, maybe he was looking for substance. And
Yeah.
he was here, have some food. You almost drowned.
Well,
But
maybe
then,
maybe it was a healing berry. I mean, we don't
well, you don't
know.
know. I mean, I don't think it was because they were kind of separated they were separated from the lake of rejuvenation. So I don't think.
Yes. So at this point, because he went back and because he drops that berry and then freaking goes back for the berry as he's getting ready to follow Ash. And from here, we get a big scene, which looks like it's the factory to that bio company that we were introduced to about 5, 10 minutes ago. Doug, you want to go from here?
Yeah. So we're in the facility and we're seeing I think what can safely be assumed as the head honcho is kind of rallying the troops, and we're getting a bunch of readings are coming back negatives, and he's like, Sector B came up negative. We got to return to Sector D. Um, they're looking for the healing spring,
Yes.
and he's like, I'm not going to rest until I find it. And then we hear glass shatter, and it's not the fun type of glass shatter like Stone Cold coming out. Um, we look over and we see that Wobbuffet has broken a beaker, and we see that Team Rocket have somehow wormed their way into this company, and we see James has a new hairdo. Jessie's got her hair up
A
in a
bond.
bun, and Meowth's wearing a freaking
Toupee.
uh, looks like a Dutch boy wig because why not?
It looks like the hairstyle of the Beatles, freaking for Meow.
Except not jet black.
Yes, it's blonde, and, and Dr. Zed uh, comes up and he looks over at Team Rocket, and he's like just clean up your mess. He's like, make sure that it doesn't happen again or you're out of here. And Team Rocket gets onto the ground and starts cleaning up. And then we have one of his assistants come over and kind of whisper to Team Rocket. He's like, come on, don't do anything you're not told to do. He's like, and one thing I forgot to mention, the doctor's room is off limits. Nobody goes into that room. He gets prickly if anyone goes near it. He's like, that's just his office. And of course, that kind of perks up Team Rocket's ears because when Team Rocket's told not to do something, what do they want to do, Doug?
They want to do something because they're not competent like in the black and white season.
So We go straight from here, and Doug, I'm going to have you go to this next part of the scene because we're seeing eyes opening of Coco.
So Coco wakes up, and the first thing he sees is Ash and Pikachu, and he says, "Oh, he's awake." And we pan out, and we see that they are in a hospital room, and Coco immediately jumps up, freaked out because this might potentially be one of the very few times he's been indoors.
Yes.
Um, so he kind of jumps up and tries to hang on one of the lights, but obviously it gives way, and Ash is like, "Well, what's going on?" And um, Chansey comes to the door, and um, he does a tuck jump over Chansey, and he's into the waiting room, and
He's freaking out.
he's basically going crazy. And we see everybody in the. I mean, this isn't a Pokemon set. Well, I mean, I guess it is
It is a
because,
Pokemon Center.
well, where else is Ash going to take him? And he freaks out. He goes outside and he's just running, and he runs into the street, which is a flashback, kind of reminiscent to the montage at the beginning of the movie when Dada had to grab him by a vine, or grab him with a vine to pull him back, before the fireworks show. And Ash pulls him out of the way, and then we see Pokemon get startled because the van has to veer to avoid hitting him, and the Pokemon is, oh god damn it, it was just there. It's
Dreadnought.
Dreadnought, and he's spooked, so he takes off, and it's like, okay, we can't have Dreadnought just running all over the place. So Coco, seeing a Pokemon in danger, his instincts take over. He runs, and he's like swinging in the trees, and he jumps down in front of the Dreadnought and just takes it head on, and basically gets the Dreadnought to heal, and kind of soothes him.
But yeah, he's rubbing him down, and the trainer comes walking over. He's like, "Well, shit." He's like, "He doesn't normally take to strangers. What did you do?" And Coco, he's never. This is Coco's first time, so Coco thinks he's a Pokemon, and he's starting to see a lot of people that look like him,
Hmm.
and he's never been introduced to this before. So he's still freaking out. And after he comes down to Dreadnought and the trainer comes over, he starts running through the city again.
And Ash and Pikachu are in hot pursuit, and Coco's basically running on all fours, in a crouch position, and then he stops because somebody's returning a Pokemon to their Pokeball, and he's just mesmerized because he's probably never seen a Pokeball.
No, he hasn't.
Um, and Ash is like, "Well, you know, I have a Pokeball. You want to see it?" And he licks it, and that kind of.
Ash is like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" He bounces back, and Coco tries to grab it. He's like, let it go. That's my Pokeball. He's like, "Pikachu, help me out." And Pikachu just thunder shocks the mess out of the both of them. And Ash falls over, Coco falls over. They're just stunned from the electricity. And Ash kind of puts two and two together real quick because, I mean, electricity just jogs the old memory. And
Right.
he's like, "Is this the first time you've seen a Pokeball?" And Coco starts talking Zarude talk. He's like, Zarude. And Pikachu's ears perk up because he's talking in Pokemon language. And Ash looks over at Pikachu and he's like, "Pikachu, what is it?" And Pikachu's like, "Pika." And Coco's like, "Zarude, Zarude." And he's like, no way. He's like, you can actually talk to Pikachu? And freaking Pikachu is sitting there like, yeah, he can talk to me. And he's like, awesome. So my name is Ash. And Pikachu is like, Pikachu, Pika, P. Trying to be all good old friends with him. And freaking Coco is just looking at him and he's like, Pikachu, Pika, P? And he's like, you can talk to each other. And Pikachu and Coco just start having a conversation back and forth. And Ash is like, he's like, my name is Ash. And freaking Coco's like, he's like, name is Ash. And Coco starts dancing and he's like, what is your name? And Pikachu goes over and asks Coco what his name is. And he's like, Coco. And he's like, so your
Ash
name,
immediately has to repeat it. Oh, so your name is Coco. It's
nice to meet you.
fuck over the other.
And Coco's like, Czar? And he Ash sticks his hand out to give him a handshake, but of course, someone that's not native to other people, he looks over at Ash's hand and he grabs his wrist and he puts his hand up as if they're like putting their palms together. And Coco is just infatuated. He's just moving his hands with Ash's hands. And it's at this point that we go into a musical montage. And Doug, you want to go over the things that we go over in this music montage?
So basically, we get the standard like wild man in civilization thing. You know, we get some new clothes, and um, Coco's kind of picking up the walk cycle a little bit, and he's stopped dead in his tracks by an ice cream cone, which fair play. Um, so they're taking pardon me. So Ash takes them to an ice cream shop, and they get like these mega cones, and you know
Three
Coco's
scoops apiece.
right. So Coco's a little he's mesmerized by it, but he's tentative because he's like, I don't know what to do with this. And then he watches Ash, and Ash gives his a lick, so Coco does the same and just instantly falls in love. And then it looks like we're at some kind of a festival, and we got Pokemon dancing around, and we got live music, and we got battles in the streets, and
Which is pretty freaking cool.
yeah,
So,
um,
this is a nice little town.
it's like a big ass block party,
Yes.
and they're just sitting on the side of the road watching the battle, and I don't like the image of the Pokemon giving his trainer a high five. I just feel like that's ridiculous, but that's just me. Um, and you can start to see that things are kind of starting to make a little bit of sense to Coco, and they're standing there, and it's towards the end of the day, and Ash goes, "This is kind of cool, isn't it?" And something snaps um, Coco to attention, and he takes off in the opposite direction. And we see that they're trying to get ready for the big show closing fireworks, and there's a group of Pokemon that are standing literally in the way.
Yes. And it's at this point where the Pokemon are I mean, we don't know what the Pokemon are yet. And freaking Coco goes over to one of the Pokemon and the guy is basically saying he's like we can't start this festival because all of these Pokemon they won't leave or
So
Phalanx.
so they come over. So Zarude starts speaking to him,
Yes.
and um, the he immediately gets an idea of what's going on. He immediately takes off towards the machinery, and the foreman's like, "Hey, be careful around there." And he jumps up on one of the pipes and he looks down in there and he sees one of them.
Yeah, and Ash is trying to communicate that this kid can talk to Pokemon, and the guy's basically kind of brushing him off. He's like, yeah, yeah, he can really talk to Pokemon. Okay, freaking Coco, he ties the rope to his leg and he drops down into this little barrel, which I'm guessing it's one of the big firework barrels, and
Yeah.
one of the phalanx is in there, and he drops down. Ash is holding on to the other end of the rope, and Coco grabs the phalanx. And at this point, Ash starts pulling him out, and the old man and everyone else in the city starts to drag him out of the firework presentation. And they see that there was a Pokemon in there, and it was one of the Phalanx buddies. And Flink is so all the Flink are happy that their buddy is safe now. I'm kind of wondering what the hell this Flink was doing, because that's kind of high to go up there to kind of get lost.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand, like, okay, he fell in, but it's like, okay, but he fell in the highest tower.
And the old man apologizes to Ash, and he's like, I kind of jumped to conclusions. I'm sorry. I guess he can really talk to Pokemon. He's like, sometimes I let my anger get the best of me. And it's at this point that Coco kind of gets infatuated a little bit, because he's looking over at Ash and all the Phalanx are over there and they're frolicking on top of him, and he's like, man, all these Pokemon, they like these humans. And we go straight from that to a firework presentation late at night. Doug?
And, with Coco being a bit of a wild boy, he is, pardon me, he's frightened by the fireworks. So
Yes.
he runs behind Ash because, big boom and all that. And my Netflix has crashed.
Okay, no problem. I got you. And it's at this point, Ash is just saying, he's like, it's just fireworks, and Coco kind of repeats, he's like, just fireworks. And we get an old man, who basically he owns these phalanx, and he owns the sheep. He's a farmer, and he's like, I should let you know my gratitude has no boundaries. Thank you for saving my Pokemon. And he's like, ever since we've successfully launched the fireworks show here, to make our wish to Celebi, the mythical Pokemon. Ash goes, and he's like, I want to see him, and everyone in the town basically goes, yeah. I mean, we make wishes over to Celebi, but Celebi hasn't been seen here in some time. And he's like, unfortunately, he hasn't been seen, and since we last saw it, things have been kind of going bad. And they say Celebi only appears when it is all peaceful. And since it's not peaceful, apparently Celebi hasn't been here. Doug, you want to go? Or are you
and
good?
and yeah, and so Ash is kind of getting that, and Coco's kind of following the phalanx, and he kind of looks over and he sees everybody enjoying the fireworks, and he he gets spooked again. Well, he doesn't really get spooked, but like something kind of clicks in him, and he's watching, and then we snap back to the jungle, and we see that Swarvat is looking, and he finds Dada, and he's kind of explaining. I mean, it's implied that he's explaining what's going on with Coco, and um, Dada's like, oh, and then we go back to the festival, and Coco is pointing at a father and son, and what does Ash say? Because he kind of puts his fucking foot in his mouth.
Yes. So, right before we do get to that, um, during the festival, right before Squovat goes to find the old man in the festival, kind of tells Ash that anytime that Celebi comes, he leaves an egg inside of the forest, and that he hasn't been seen here in quite some time, but he comes back from the future, and that he's a futuristic Pokemon. I mean, I know most of you out there know Celebi and know that Celebi is said to go through time. People that follow Pokemon very well, and that's basically what the old man was stating here. But fast forward to your time where you were talking about the father. Let's go. Let's go there. Let's see. Bum bum
So
bum.
yeah, then he kind of it's real quick. I mean, he kind of gets kind of caught up, and he's like, "Oh, uh-huh." And then we go back to the festival, and Coco's pointing at a father and son, and they have a Pokemon, and the son's saying, "Oh, can we go back?" And the father's like, "Maybe tomorrow." And what does Ash say? Because he puts his foot in his mouth.
He's
Oh,
like
he goes, "Oh,
he
that's
he
a
said
family."
family.
And then, Coco kind of repeats it like, family. And, that really um, kind of flips something. And Coco ends up scaling
Light pole.
a light pole, and he's looking off in the distance, and he sees the mountains, and he's basically, in so many words, he's basically telling Ash to follow him.
Yes.
And, because it's a movie. Ash has to say, "Are you telling me to follow you?" It's like, fuck it, just go with it. And they go deep into the jungle, and Ash is doing his absolute damnedest to keep up with
Okay.
Coco, because obviously Coco is familiar. And then we are finally reunited with Scorvat, and you can see that the Scorvat's kind of catching Coco up, and Ash is an idiot. He's like, "Oh, that's cute." Meanwhile, um, Scorvat's like, "Hey, some shit's about to go down," and then Pikachu and Ash are, um,
Whipped up by a vine.
yeah, exactly. They are whipped up by a vine, and then we, and then we see Dada has caught them, and what does he say?
He's like Ash is like a Pokemon. And Coco is looking at him, and he's like, Coco, family. He's like, your family has, or no, Ash is like, your family has a Pokemon. So Ash is starting to put two and two together, and Dad comes over, and he's like, did you use human language? And he's like, first you just vanished without a trace. Now you bring a human. And Coco is looking at him, and he starts looking down, and it's at this point where they start talking back and forth. So Ash is probably not understanding what is going on at this very moment, because now we're listening to the conversation between Zarude and Coco, and Coco's like, "You knew all along, didn't you?" He's like, "I'm a human, aren't I?" And Zarude's like,
He's just caught dead in the headlights.
I know. And Coco's like, he's like, come on, Dad, tell the truth. He's like, I'm a human just like him. I'm not a Zarude at all, am I? And he's like, wrong. You are a Zarude. He's like, don't lie to me. And freaking Zarude is like kind of taken aback. Ash and Pikachu are untangling themselves from the vine and the tree from where they were whipped up. And it's at this point you can tell Ash doesn't know what's going on, because he looks over at Pikachu. He's like, "What do you think is going on over there?" And he's like, "They really do look like a family, don't they?" And
And
oh, sorry, you can go from here.
no, and Coco's basically bleeding his heart out. He's like, I brought Ash to show you, and when I was up there was a lot of people that look like me, and um
They launched
and there's
something into the sky and it sparkled. Humans
and
and
he should
Pokemon watched it together and they were all smiling.
but he should know, or at least have some kind of basic understanding about fireworks, as noted by the opening.
Well, he was a baby.
I don't care.
he he doesn't remember.
I don't care. Then don't show us that.
So Squavette comes out of a tree, just sitting right next to Pikachu, just basically saying, "Yeah, some shit's about to go down, Pikachu. You might want to sit back and watch this." Squavette's just a shit stir, and he's like, we jump back to Coco, and Coco he's like, the Karoo can't do everything you taught me. The Zaru can't do that. He's like, you taught me everything. And he shoves Zaru back, or Dada back. He's like, you showed me how to be a fool, how to run, how to swing on vines, and all of it. And he's like, so why didn't you tell me I was a human, Doug?
And he's like, I thought I was weird for making friends with the Pokemon, and, but that wasn't it. It was because I was a human, and it means I can be friends with Pokemon. And he says, if it means that I can be friends with Pokemon, I would rather be a human. And Dada's kind of, you can tell that kind of got him by the heart. And
Pikachu's listening, and Pikachu's heart is tearing as he's listening to it, and Ash has no idea what's going
no, Ash is just kind of living.
on.
Um, and Dada was like, well, this was bound to happen sooner or later. And he's like, you're right. Um, he's like, you really are a human, which is kind of ridiculous because he's been saying that for half an hour. Um, he said, I'm not your real Dada. Um,
Follow me.
and he, basically, yeah. Um, and he's like you said, follow me. And then they go, but we don't follow him. We go back to the research center, and it looks like Team Rocket is trying to get in some overtime.
Yes, and this is where we see James. James looks like he's the smarter one of the bunch. For once,
No, it's the haircut.
it's the haircut.
It's the haircut.
I'm digging the haircut though, but he's sitting at a computer and he has a bunch of files up. It looks like they're trying to tap into the database to kind of get some information. And James can't figure out the security code. And he's like, we're gonna have to go over to the doctor's computer, but in order to get over there, we need a key because the door is locked. And Jesse's like, yeah, he's no doubt hiding something inside of there. He's not going to keep all of the files out here. So they get the bright idea to break into the doctor's office, Dr. Zed, and we jump back to it. It looks like an abandoned building that's now full of moss. And Zarude jumps on, or Dada Zarude jumps on the table, and he's ravishing through a bunch of stuff. And he's like, when I found you, it was raining, which it wasn't.
Right.
I fully remember that scene at the beginning of the movie. It was not raining at that point, but he's like, when I found you, it was raining, you were alone, and you were laying in a strange little box, and there were no other humans around. He's like, you were wearing this when I found you. And he grabs a necklace off of a table and he throws it over to Coco. And it's the little baby chain that he was wearing in that first scene. And Coco's like, did you take this? Did you take me with, or why did you take me with you? I'm sorry. And he's like, I honestly don't know. I never knew my own family, and I kind of felt obligated to take you. He's like, I saw you just laying there, and I brought you back, I'm gonna paraphrase this because this is a pretty long scene, but he's like, I found you. I didn't know my parents, and I kind of felt bad for you, and I wanted to try to find your parents, but I could not find your parents. And it was at that time he's like, I took you back to the jungle, and that's when I got outed, and I became your dad, and then I ended up raising you to the Zarude that you are. And I believe also in this scene, he gets a photo. Yes, Zarude picks up a photo and hands it over to Coco. And he's like, these are your parents. And Coco kind of looks at the photo. He kind of dusts it off. And it's him as a baby with his mom and dad. Doug?
Yeah, and he said, and Ash is an idiot. He goes, "They look just like you." And Dada's like, "I looked everywhere trying to give you a family, and um, but by the time I found this nest, it was empty, and I decided to raise you myself." And he said, "Looking back, that might be a decision. That might be a decision. That might be the wrong decision." I speak. Um, and he goes, I've told you everything, and I see that you're sad. So now you must decide. Um, what does he say? He said, you must decide if you want,
If you want to be in this jungle or you want to be a human.
if
And
you, yeah, if
he's
you,
like, you must decide. And then he kind of whips out of the building, and they kind of end that scene.
and Ash is kind of sitting in the back, and Coco, you can see is trying to process, and then we're back with Team Rocket.
Yes. And Team Rocket they're standing next to what seems to be the doctor's room, and they have a little computer hooked up to the door. And at this point, they have a little card that they're trying to program, and James is like, I got it. And of course, as soon as he gets it, Jesse runs over and grabs it. And James is like, be careful. You don't want to lose it. And Jesse's like, I got it. Nothing's going to happen. And of course, what ends up happening, Jessie is holding it. She's dancing around. She drops the card. The card starts dropping down all the steps, and Team Rocket is doing they're running after it, and the card hits the bottom step, and they all jump from like 6 steps above it, and they try to grab it. And what's at the bottom of the step? It's a Cramorant, the Cramorant
So,
from the beginning of the movie.
right, I was going to say the same Cramorant that almost had Pikachu for lunch.
Yes.
Um, and of course, um, after much struggle and being the fact that it was Team Rocket, he gets away with the card.
Yes. Well, not only does he get away with the card, freaking he eats the card and just swallows it whole. And it's funny because Jesse had the card at the bottom of the steps, and the Cramorant just goes over and just chomps her hand, eats the card, and flies away. I was like, well, shit.
And then, it's, because nothing good happens to Team Rocket in this version. Um,
No.
and then we're back with Coco and Ash, and Ash is a horrible person.
He
Um,
is not. He is a 10-year-old.
I don't care.
But he actually talks about his father in this scene. Do you want to go over that part, Doug?
Not particularly.
No? Okay.
No.
He's like, when I was little, I told some kids about my goals and they laughed at me. He's like, but my dad told me something I never forgot. The map to your goal is inside yourself. And that was a quote that his dad had given. He's like, if you give up your dreams, never, or if you give up, your dreams are never going to come true. And he's like, now being on my journey with Pikachu, I'm starting to get what he meant. He's like, don't let it get to you. Your family. You can argue, but then everything will go back to normal in no time. And he's like, I'll tell you, family sure can be a mystery, huh? And it's at this point that Coco, he's holding the chain that he had as a baby. In his other hand, he's holding a picture of his mom and dad, and he holds it up to the sky. And we get Coco starts looking around, and he starts ravishing through some boxes. He's looking for something. We're not sure what he's looking for. Asks like, "What are you doing?" And Squovet and Pikachu are right behind him too. And he starts talking in Pokemon again. He's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "You want to find your family?" He's like, "I'll help you look." And Ash is looking through a bunch of stuff, and Squovet just throws down like this little card. It looks like an old card that has a logo on it. And Ash is like, "Hey, I met someone with this mark earlier today. I know exactly where they are." And freaking Ash is thinking that he just solved the mystery, and he's now going to take Coco to this place, and we get a flashback of the research woman that was helping him earlier in the movie, or not helping him, but that was talking to him earlier in the movie. And now Ash is about to go and start taking Coco back over there. Doug?
So then we go back deep into the jungle and we see that Dada is sitting by himself and he is approached by the elder, and the elder says, "Oh, so you finally told him the truth," and um, Dada's like, "Yeah, but I should have done that from the start of all this," and the elder's like, "I'm not too sure about that," and um, he's like,
How could I be a dad when I didn't even have a dad?
"Right," and um, what does the elder say? Um,
The elder doesn't really. He's like, I haven't seen Celebi in a long. We haven't seen Celebi in a long time, have we? And Zaru's he's kind of changing the topic, and he's like, Celebi. He's like, the last time I saw it was yes, it was just a little bit before you appeared to me. And he's like, are you saying that it's my fault? He's like, wait till I'm done talking, please. And the elder kind of swings its vine over to Zarude, and he's like, first Celebi vanishes, then you appear, and then you decide to raise Coco. Don't you think there might be a reason for these events? So it's at this point the elder is looking over at Zarude, and he's like, yeah, he's like, you might be the reason that we haven't seen Celebi in this forest. I mean, Celebi only comes around when things are okay, and when you disturb all the events in this forest, Celebi went away. So it might be your fault, Doug.
and then we kind of widen out and we get a quick glimpse of Coco looking up at the night sky, and then Dada is back at the tree that he planted with Coco at the beginning, and we get a flashback to Coco with the injured Rufflet, and um, Coco's like, "I want to take it to the spring because I know," and Dada's like, "Well, that's dangerous," and Coco's like, "I don't get it. I literally have a Pokemon in my arms that needs that spring," and um, he
Zarud, at that point, he's like, I have a better idea. Just lay Rafflet down. He like takes his vines and he whips them off in four different directions around some trees. And he starts using a power that Coco has never seen before.
and I mean, it works. Um,
It heals him.
it gets dark and the vines start to grow, and Coco lets out, or Dada lets out a roar, and the light kind of engulfs Rufflet, and uh, you know, everything kind of calms down. The vines go back. You can see that it took a little bit of energy out of Dada, but you know, we see the rufflet kind of spring up, and it's just, you know, fine and dandy. And Coco's like, that was incredible. And he's like, how did you do that? You got to tell me. And you could see that um, Zarude's exhausted.
Yes. It took a lot of energy, and he explains to Coco, he's like, you can only use that move ever so often because it takes a lot of power to use it, and it really really drains you. It's not something that you can use too much, because if you use it too much, it can kill you.
Which is bullshit because he's. I mean, we covered it a little bit ago. He's raising him to be a Pokemon, so he's, oh, you have a life force. You know, you can't be, you know, that's bullshit.
Well, he was protecting Coco. I mean,
Was
he
he?
he in his own way. And
Mm.
I'm gonna give my thoughts on Zarude at the end of this podcast, because I feel kind of two ways um, during this movie. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. But I'm gonna give you my full review on Dad at the very end of this movie. So we come back, and it's now daytime, and Ash and Coco are now running around the forest, and Coco is basically running up to any Pokemon that he can. He has a picture of his parents, and he's basically saying, "Have you seen these people? Have you seen them? Have you seen them?" And all the Pokemon are like, "No, no, I've never seen them before." And we it looks like we catch up to real time, and they're kind of exhausted. So they've spent the day looking for his parents, but to no avail. Doug?
And then we go back to the research center, and um, Jesse's got a bowl of Pokemon food, and um,
Because
James is like,
she's they're trying to get that Cramorant.
but Pokemon. What does he say? Pokemon food gives me.
He said Pokemon food gives me gas. And then they look over and they see Ash, and they're like, "Oh shit."
It's like, of course it's him. Um, I mean, so they just kind of basically wandered into this research center. I mean, just by accident because they were kind of down on their luck.
Yes. So Ash starts talking to um, I'm gonna call her the assistant. She did
Shannon,
Shannon. Okay, okay. Yeah, I was about to say they did give her a name at the beginning of the movie, but they don't reference her name that much. But Shannon kind of lets them in, and they're looking around the research facility, and she's telling, yeah, right this way, don't touch anything. And Ash is like just looking around. Coco is holding his breath. Ash is mesmerized with all the technology that's all around him. And this is funny because Coco walks over to a chair and doesn't know what to do with it. He as like, you sit in it, and Coco's just sniffing it, and it just steps on top of the chair. And then here comes Dr. Zed, and he's like, I'm the head of this place. And he's like, I was told you have a question for me. And Ash's like, yes. He's like, my name is Ash, this is my partner Pikachu, and this is Coco. And Dr. Zed looks over at the chain. He recognizes the baby chain, and he's like, we're looking for these people. And he shows them the photo. And this is where we find out that Coco's parents are dead. Doug?
and we also find out that Coco's real name is Al.
Yes.
Um, and pardon me. And you know, he brings up he's got some digital photos. Looks like, you know, company photos, like at an outing, and he's got, you know, photos of them like at work. and he said they were.
Scares the mess out of Coco when he pops up all the pictures.
He said they were like the leading researchers of the Healing Spring project, and they could never find it. Um,
And
let's
he's like,
see.
although
The,
a large number of researchers attempted to find these healing springs, they were the only ones that have found it,
he said they even yeah they even brought back a sample at one point. Um,
and that it was a historic breakthrough. And he's like, I am here to complete their research.
and then he walks over to. I mean, I'm gonna start calling him Al, I guess. And he's like, "Could I see your um, can I see your necklace?" And he's
Eh,
like, "I need to, confirm that you actually are Al." He's like, "I won't hurt you, but this will help me." And
in my research.
he kind of takes a shot, and you can see that the scanner kind of starts to glow, and you're getting some readings, and
It's like the device that he uses is like Disney. It's like a Disney ring. So people that have ventured out to Disney World, when you hold your wand or watch up to your hotel door, if you stay on Disney property and it glows green, it looks just like that. So just envision that without the ears.
except I've got on good authority that those things only work about 40% of the time.
Yeah, they do. Trust me.
Um,
I know we're talking about this, but I had a 40-50 minute venture trying to get it to work because they didn't activate it the right way. So yeah, fun stuff.
so it's that it's confirmed that it is Al, and then Dr. Zed has to share the unfortunate news with Ash, essentially, that um, his parents passed away 10 years ago. And
Okay, so he is 10. Okay.
and Ash is kind of like, no, you're kidding. It's like, dude, read the fucking room. Um, and then he basically has the unfortunate task of relaying it to Coco, basically saying that his parents aren't on this world anymore. Which
That's
I
not easy for
mean,
anyone.
that's and especially somebody that has as slight of a grasp on English.
And
Um,
he also Zed also said that they died in a car accident is what he says.
oh, I missed that part. Yeah. And then they said, well, and naturally we just assumed that Al had passed away as well.
Because he went missing.
And then another researcher comes running down the steps because we've got additional readings from Al's pendant.
And it's at this point where they kind of throw up on the big screen that the pendant is basically the key to these this healing springs. And he's like, I thought all of this data was lost. Zed is saying he's like all of the files were corrupted. He's like, but it seems like you hold the key. And they throw it up there, and it's the big Zarude tree that we saw in the movie, and we find out that the Zarude tree is actually where the healing springs are. And freaking Squovat is like, shit. He's like, now all the humans are gonna come here. He starts getting scared. Coco is looking and as if he knows exactly where it is, and um, Zed is like, he's like, Al, you, if you know something, you must tell me. Do it for your parents, which is kind of a dick move. But he's like, do it
Well,
for,
we find out that Zed is in fact a dick, so I mean
yeah,
it tracks.
Yeah. So he's like, do it for your parents. He's like, complete this research for me. If you know where this springs is, you need to tell me. And Coco is like, he's like, no. And he runs out of the building. And Ash is like, well, if Coco's going, I'm gonna go too. So sorry guys. See you later. And they all just run out. And it's at this point, and I want to point this out because it's a key part, but Zed's assistant Sharon is about to go run after the kids, and Zed stops her, and he looks over at the tree, and we kind of fade out, and we fade out to Coco running out of the facility. And Doug, you want this part?
So Ash catches up to him. He's like, "Well, I'll go with you." And Al's like, "Nah, and he shakes him off, and he just takes off running. And Squovat is kind of
In the middle.
conflicted, and then he's like, "Well, I probably should go with him." And so he takes off, and he's basically trying his absolute damnedest to keep up with Al, but Al is in fucking Rambo mode, and he eventually like Skolvac kind of reaches his breaking point, and he just starts stomping his feet and screaming, and you can see that Al is just mentally drained, and he stops. He's just staring at the tree, and he collapses, and he's out of breath, and he's just the tree's just off in the distance, and then we find out that Ash and
Pikachu.
Pikachu took off to track him, and Pikachu is unable to find the scent. But then, pardon me,
Here comes Squovat.
luck of all lucks, Squovat sees him, jumps on Ash's face, and is basically miming that um, Coco took off running, and um, then we kind of get a little bit of inner monologue from Coco, and he says, "All those people know who I am," and he pulls the photo out of his pocket, and he says, "Why was I left in the forest? Was I left because they couldn't care for me anymore, and they had to leave me here?" He's kind of you can see he's kind of getting a little cold, so he kind of pulls his clothes closer to him, and then he finds a freaking
Tracker.
tracker on the back shoulder of his jacket.
And
And
we get a flashback to when Zed was walking over to Coco, and when he put his hands on his shoulder, he put the tracker on him.
he's bullshit.
And freaking Coco, he is sitting there. He's like, "What is this?" And then we start hearing a rumbling in the forest at this point, like loud explosions of trees getting knocked down. And Coco's like, "What the hell?" And we get this is where they put all the money into this movie, because these robot we get robots, and we get freaking hovercrafts, and these things look freaking 3D as all get out. They look like they don't even belong in the movie, Doug.
Yeah, and we find out that Zed was basically obviously he was tracking um, Coco's exact location, and they come through the trees, and everybody's kind of celebrating. They're like, "We found it," and Zed's like, "Yes, there is no doubt," and he's just looking all sorts of menacing, and he said, "This is the healing spring. This is its source." And then we're back at Team Rocket. And they go, "That's a tree, isn't it?"
And Coco starts running down from the tree, and he runs over to Zed talking in Pokemon. He's like, "Ow." He's like, "You made it possible." He's like, "No hard feelings, son." He's like, "I had to track you." He's like, I'm sorry, but I kind of used you to find the springs.
And
And
then
freaking
the
Coco gets mad. He's like, "You wouldn't understand."
and then the girl tries to Shannon. She has a name for God's sakes. She's like, "Well, we didn't want to do it, but
But
I mean,
but
you
we
didn't
had
leave
to.
it right. We had to. You didn't leave us with a lot of choice." And Coco jumps at Zed, and then one of the robots just grab him out of midair. Um, and pardon me, and one of the guy driving's like, "What do you want me to do with him?" And he's
Z-
like,
He's like, we have no choice. He's gonna come with us. We wouldn't want him to attack us again now, would we? Which I want to point out, that exact line was read word for word from the Japanese. That was such a significant part in the Japanese one that I was watching before I watched the English version, and they took that line word for word. So I was
and
glad they
then
kept that in there.
we see the machineries just stomping through the forest, and we see that the Pokemon are scrambling, trying to find higher ground, and um, out of out of the blue, we see a thunder shock, and we find out that Pikachu, Ash, and Scorvat have confronted the researchers, and Dr. Zed is like, um, forgive us, but we decided to use you. So everybody's just using everybody,
Yeah,
um, and nobody's even getting paid for it. Um, um,
and Ash, or well, Coco is basically wondering why Ash is here, and Ash is like, I came in here to come find you because that's what friends do.
ugh. Um,
It's a kids movie.
I have fucking got a cavity. Um, and then we have this big rallying moment, and then all of a sudden, what's that Pokemon? It's from freaking Gold.
Ariados.
Yeah,
So Ariados spins a web onto Ash, Coco, and Pikachu, and it's at this.
and Scorvat. Now let's not,
Oh yeah, he did get Squavet as well. So Zed is like, he's like, I beg your forgiveness, but you guys are not going to trump on my research. And one of the researchers then picks up all four kids. I mean, well, picks up Coco, Ash, Pikachu, and Squavet and throws them all in one big hole into the back of this truck. And he's like, just keep it down, will you? No hard feelings. And then closes the door on them.
and then Ash, stupidly bounces against the wall of the truck and says, "Let us out of here!" Like that's gonna fucking work.
I know.
Um, and then as they're heading out, Zed says to Team Rocket, um, "I'm entrusting the children to you." And then
Yes.
they kind of, "Yes, sir." And um,
Team Rocket gets the little snickering look on their face. They're like, ah, we finally got Pikachu now. And that's what they're
and
thinking.
then Jesse says,
They look up and they see the they see the damn bird Pokemon Cramorant. It flies um on top of the truck, and they just look at it. And we go back into the inside the truck where Ash and Coco are.
and Ash is trying to figure out what's going on, and Coco just lets out this big scream, and um, off in the distance,
And Squirrelpet's trying to get a berry.
well, he's hungry, and then off in the distance, the Zarude are brought to attention of the scream, and they look and they see the smoke in the distance, and the loud crashing, and it's like, what do you think that was? And the elder's like, I don't know, but one of you should go look. Um, and I feel like they missed an opportunity for a not it joke, but whatever. Um,
So it's at this point we go back to the campground, and Team Rocket is trying to figure out how they can get the bird, the Cramorant, to spit out the card key They're like, that has to be the same Cramorant. How can we do it? Oh, we can use Pikachu. He's like, well, but we're trying to get Pikachu. And Meowth kind of snaps some sense into him. And he's like, we can get Pikachu whenever. He's like, we need to get the secrets of what the doctor is hiding. So he's like, why don't we let Pikachu out and then it can fly into the Cramorant's mouth again and use its Thunder Shock again, and then it'll cough up the card key.
And everybody kind of comes around to it, and they're like, "All right, sounds like a plan." And we see the machinery is just tromping through the forest, cutting shit down, and you can see that this is all starting to get to
Coco.
Coco, and Ash is jumping around like an idiot. Um, and then he decides he's gonna bite through the freaking um,
Spider web.
the silk or whatever,
Yeah.
and he's just an idiot. And um,
Ash,
Ash is,
Ash gets down and he does like get enough he does bite through enough so Pikachu can get its tail out.
and Ash is like, "I'm a babyface. I don't quit until we win." So ultimate John Cena move. And um,
We jump back over to where the Zarude are.
they're still trying to figure out what's going on, and um,
One of the Zarude in the pack seems like he's the smart one of the bunch. I'm going to call him Smarty, and because he doesn't have a name. So Smarty is over here. He's like, I can tell you what they're coming for. They're coming for one thing, and that's the heart tree. He's like, and the Alpha, he's like, I want the rest of you to report this back to the Elder now. He's like, what about you? He's like, I'm going to stop them in their tracks, just like the Alpha he is.
and then we're back in the truck, and we see that Ash gets enough of Pikachu free that Pikachu can use Iron Tail on the rest of the material, and then Coco runs over and gets Squovat free. Squovat doesn't give two dicks either way. He's got a berry. He's fine.
Yeah, he's sitting there eating a berry.
And James goes over to the researcher that was watching the back of the truck and says, I just got word straight from the doctor that I'm supposed to take over the watch. And
the guy doesn't even think twice.
The guy's like, all right, sweet, good deal. I'm going to go grab a smoke. Don't smoke, kids.
And freaking James, he's like, yeah, I'll stand guard here. And then we go to the top of the truck where the Cramorant is, and Meowth and Jessie are right behind it. And Cramorant looks like it's like trying. It looks like it's choking on something in its throat, and then it starts pecking at its feathers, and it notices Jessie right behind it and just gets freaked the hell out. And Jessie grabs the leg, freaking Meowth tackles the Cramorant. They fall off the truck, and we go back inside of the truck, and Pikachu is using Volt Tackle against the door, and James is like, oh shit. He's like, guys, hurry up. And Meowth is like, just do it. Just open it. And James is like, all right, here we go. And Ash is like, Pikachu, one more time. And it's at this moment, James is opening the door. Pikachu starts glowing for his Volt Tackle. And James opens the door. Pikachu flies out of the truck, and Cramorant opens its mouth. Pikachu flies into Cramorant's mouth, and James is like, yes! And freaking Pikachu is like, not this again, and fucking thunderbolts in Cramorant's mouth, shocking the mess out of it. And the card key comes flying out of Cramorant's mouth. James grabs it, and Ash and Coco drop out, and they're like, do you mind if we run? And James is like, just do your thing. I'm good. And they just run off.
and James is like, well, actually, we should be thanking you. And then the Cramorant attacks his head. And then we're getting this big showdown between the Zarude and some of the mechanical devices, and it honestly looks like it's more even of a fight than it should be. Um, and
These
you can.
these are some strong Zarude.
I was gonna say it's making impact. I mean, you can see that it's kind of shaking everything, and those root are kind of working in tandem. And at one point, it looked like they kind of scrambled things, but it's not slowing down. And
We find out that the machinery is invincible because Zaru comes down with a hammer fist on the top of it, and it looks like it has some type of shield because it didn't even make a dent, and it looked like the machine kind of like healed itself
yeah,
as soon as impact actually hit it. And Zaru's like, shit.
and you know, um, Coco is running to possibly join the fight. He's stripping off his city bought clothes, and the doctor comes up on his little bike gimmick, and my Netflix is about to crash.
Okay, so he comes out. He's like, they're all simple Pokemon. He's like, they'll run when faced with real danger. He's like, let's just keep going. And it's at this point, freaking Coco takes the little rock that's tied in the string that we saw at the beginning of the movie, and he's on top of the big robot, and he flicks it down onto Dr. Zed and flips Dr. Zed off of his hovercraft bike. And he's like, "Don't you lay a finger on my dada!" And we have this rude sitting there, and Dada is injured at this point. He, and he's like, "Are you all right?" And Dada Zarude is like, "Why did you come back here?" And freaking Zed, he's like, "You do nothing but get in the way, you filthy child." He's and all the researchers are now inside of a truck looking out of a window, and they're like, do you think that Pokemon it may have raised Al?" And the Zarude are starting to attack the machinery, and they're just getting owned. They're whipping the vines, and the vines are just getting whipped to shit. And Pikachu's coming over and trying to use Iron Tail, and nothing's working. Doug, are you back up?
Yeah. So yeah, Pikachu tries to run in for Iron Tail, and um, Ash, Billy Big Bollocks comes up to the freaking doctor's like, "What do you think you're doing?" And the doctor's just sitting there. Obviously, I'm winning this confrontation, um, and um,
We go straight from that to Team Rocket finally gets into his office.
right, and so they're looking for. Well, they get in there for a second, but then they shoot right back out to the battle. Um,
Yes.
and the elder finally, they return back to the elder, and um,
Well,
the
they returned back to the other, so they used an attack on Zed right before we went over to Team Rocket, which let them get away. So the Elder's already been informed about what's going on, but Dada Zarude has he has really bad wounds that I can't say. Insignificant wounds. There you go. I couldn't get that word out. And it's at this point that um, they're like, we need to get him down to the springs. The springs will heal him. And they're looking over at Ash, and he's like, I have no idea why, but this human is actually fighting on our side, and he's trying to fight up against this machine as well. And he's the one that Coco calls friend. Doug.
yeah, and the elder's like, "Oh, well, that's all well and good, but we need to stop the destruction of the jungle." And everybody's like, "We agree." And um, then we go back, and the researchers are looking dead at the spring, and Shannon goes, even up close, you can feel the power. And um, the Dr. Zed's like, yes, it's beautiful. And one of the researchers is like, look, the Pokemon from before. And Shannon's like, that must be their nest. And one of the researchers is like, yes, it's identical from the sample that we already have on file.
And then they take their basically they take a big scanning device and they hold it up to the tree and they're like, that's what's giving the power. He's like, we've detected an enormous energy coming from the tree. And Zed's like, yes, that is the home of the healing powers. He's like, shoot an anchor at that tree. And they're like, wait a minute, wait, hold on. Why are you shooting at the tree? And he's like, I don't care about the water. I care about the source. And the source is coming from the tree. So I'm going to take this tree down. And so they shoot the anchor at the tree, causing a big, huge explosion, which then ruptures some of the water flow that's going through the tree. Doug?
And the Zarude are like, well, they're taking this too far. And they're like, they're going after the heart tree. And um, and then Shannon's trying to talk
Reason with
some
them.
sense into the doctor. He's like, aren't we here for the spring? I mean, keep this up and all the Pokemon fucking Netflix. Why would you stop in the middle of a goddamn sentence? Um, and then Zed's like, you're stupid girl. He's like, the objective isn't the spring. God fucking damn it.
He's like, it's the tree. And we go straight up to Zarude. And Zarude is like, he's like, get everyone. How do we protect the tree without fighting? And Zarude's like, he's like, we are Zarude. We are the strong ones. We have no fear. And then the jungle's lifeblood, lift up your voices. They're starting to sing the song that they were singing at the beginning of the movie. So we're
Right.
starting to get that song again. And all the Zarude are coming out. And Ash's like, this is amazing. He's like, let's go for the heart tree. And then all the Zarude, this is where I got Lion King vibes, where all of these Zarude just starts racing down this tree and they're going over so they can start attacking the robot. But Coco is saying he's like Dada, just rest here. And Dada's like he's like take the human child and run. You can't win this. He's like, but the jungle Pokemon, what happens to them? He's like, I just couldn't bear to lose you. He's like, I know that. That's why I fight. Coco said. He takes his arm away from his dad and starts running away to go and help all the rest of the Zarude. And Dada just looks defeated. He's like, damn, I should have known. How can I protect the Pokemon and protect our home, protect everyone if I can't even protect you, Coco? Doug, are you good now?
And then we get the final flashback to the Rufflet, and the Rufflet's father is like giving Dad some shit, and he's like, "Well, shit, we just revived your son," and um, Dad's like, "Not even a thank you," and Coco's like, "Well, they're together again. That's the important thing," and he's like, family, 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 important. Um, yeah, all that stuff. And um,
so we bounce back from the flashback, and we're now live with Zed, and he's like, I've gone over this in my mind over and over. So why did they do this to us? And he's having flashbacks of of
he's
of
having
the
a confrontation with
with
Coco's
himself.
parents.
Yes. And he's like, why won't they understand that my path is the correct path? And he's kind of having a conniption with himself. He's like, it's right here under their noses. And he's looking at everybody, and everybody is looking at him, and they're all thinking that he's insane. He's like, you are all the same. And all the Zarudes start coming down, and they're like, oh shit, it's a bunch of Zarude. They've come for revenge. And all the Zarude jump down, and it's about to be a big ass battle. Doug.
Um, yeah, so they say, oh, here for revenge, and the doctor gets back up in his perch, and um, he's like, I'm not leaving. I'm going to show everybody the true path. And then he he's talking to Al directly, and he says,
They paid the biggest price for not going with his envision.
and he's got the crazy look in his eye, and
This is
he
this is a hard scene. Whew.
well, I mean, it's a cartoon.
It is, but I mean this is the hard part of the movie. I felt this scene.
Um, so basically, uh, Al's parents are trying to stand up for the Pokemon. He's like, look, there's a decent bit of energy in that tree. Um, you know, um, there's a Pokemon called Zarude that live in the tree, and the tree is special. And I think we should just kind of leave well enough alone. And Zed's like, I really think you should reconsider. Um,
And Coco's dad, he's like, we're suspending all operations until we find a way to resolve this for the better. And he's like, for the good of both humans and Pokemon. And freaking Zed is just pissed. He's like, stopping for a bunch of Pokemon. What is the matter with you? And he's like, humans and Pokemon share the same life force. We share the same world. I'm making the right decision, Zed. I know it.
and then
And
we're back at Team Rocket, and they're looking through the files,
yes,
and they click on a video, and it looks and it's a dejected Zed, and he's like, this spring could save countless people if people would just listen to me. And he's throwing shit, and you can tell, like, they
he
didn't
looks like
say it directly, but
he looks like he's had a drink.
right, I was gonna say he looks drunk. He's like, I know I'm on the correct path. He's like, I know I can prove to everybody that I'm right. He's like, yes, yeah, and he looks crazy, and he's just like, I need to get rid of, and he says, what's his name? He says, I need to get rid of Al's parents, and he uses their last name, and I can't.
He's like, if I were in charge, I can lead the research down the path of truth. He's like, my way is correct. Only if I had the power, I could prove to everyone that my way is the best. Yes, yes, I can. He's like, if the Mollydums, I can't say their last name. It's Mollybdnenums. I'm gonna say Mollydums weren't around. And then we go to a another flashback, and it's a car chase, and it looks like he's had this plan all along. And Zed's, I mean not Zed, Coco's dad is driving the car. His wife is right next to him. The baby is in the back seat, and the baby is crying. And Zed looks like determined. He's like, "Come on, you two. Where is the data?" And they get ran off the road. And when they get ran off the road, the car starts on fire. And then the next thing that we notice is that Coco's parents are hurt, but the baby seems to be fine. They put the baby inside of the little capsule that we saw at the beginning of the movie, and they shove Coco into the water, and then they lay down to die from their injuries. And then we get a big explosion indicating that his parents are now gone. Doug?
And then we get Zed just on his complete villain monologue, and he's like, "I will revive this research. I will do whatever it takes. I will choose the path." And there's this big explosion. He's carrying this tube of light, and the remaining little bit of the camera gleams in his eyes as we snap back to
Present day.
present. And he said, "This moment is my long-held dream come true." And then Ash is like, "How could you do this? It's so cruel." And his Shannon's like, "I never knew any of this." Um, and basically, Zed's like, "Y'all are weak, and I'm sick of being held down by you people." And he's like, "Al, admittedly, you kind of slipped through the cracks, um, but you continue to stick your nose in where it doesn't belong." Um, and I've had it. I will show no mercy to you or the Zarude.
And from there, we go and we find Dada is still injured, but he is trying to gather up all the Pokemon that are around because the Pokemon are all scared. And he falls down a tree and he's like, "Hello, guys." And all the Pokemon are just sitting there. And freaking he's like, I need your help. And all the Pokemon are like, "We're not gonna help you." And he's like, "Please, they need your help. They're gonna destroy the forest." And a freaking Nuzleaf runs up and just throws a berry at Zarude, and he's like, "I get it. I understand. But we all need to work together. You're Coco's friends, and Coco needs you." He's like, "Coco thinks the greatest of all of you." He's like, "Flygon, he thinks you're the best." He's like, he thinks you're the fastest Pokemon. He's just talking to all the Pokemon. He starts naming characteristics for all these Pokemon inside of the forest. And he's like, "We all just need to bear together, and we need to help him." He's like, "Please." He's like, "If you're not going to do this for me, please do this for Coco." And he's like, "I think we could save both the Coco and this jungle." And he's like, "I'm begging you. I'm begging all of you." And we don't really get an answer from the Pokemon. And then we bounce back, and then all the Zarude are just sitting there fighting the machines. Doug?
Yeah, and Zed's like, "How do you think you could stop me when nobody else could?" And Ash is like, "Because I'm a baby face. This is what I do." Even though, and Coco and Pikachu are trying to use attacks, and it's not working. Anything they do is bouncing off of them. But then off in the distance, we get a glowing um, vine whip, and we look, and um, Dada is leading basically the entire jungle into the battle, like freaking Avengers style. Um,
Dun, 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 dun. I'm sorry. Okay. But yeah, we get all the Pokemon. Doug, you can continue.
and the battle immediately lightens up, and like the forest itself essentially comes to life, and um, the Zarude are basically revitalized, and we're getting like rhythmic chanting from the Zarude, and Zed's like, "I don't understand it. How can they stand against me?" And we get the chant again, and the Pokemon leap into battle, and Zed's like, "I'm gonna stop you in your tracks again," and the the Pokemon are like hyper energized, and Coco's like, Dada, you're back, and he's like, of course I am. It's me, remember? And
And it's at this point, they did have a spot where the elder is looking at the battle from a distance, and he's seeing all the Pokemon battling together. He's like, and he did have a moment where he was like, man, he's like, this tree brings all the Pokemon together. And then back in the battle, you have Flygon sitting over here doing Dragon Breath on top of the machine, and no avail, and nothing's working, and all of these Pokemon are sitting here and they're attacking this machine, but nothing's going through. And but the Pokemon won't let the machine move either. So they're not doing any damage, but the machine can't do any more damage to the forest either because they're holding on to everything. And you have Pokemon just sitting there and using their solar beams and all of their big huge attacks, and the elder is like, he's like, all of the jungle, all of the jungle Pokemon, they're the roots to circulating lifeblood, and for the first time the jungle breathes. And he's like, does this mean we were mistaken? And all the we go back to the battle, and Zed is losing his shit. He's like, you impudent pieces of shit. And he like somehow fires out a big ass flamethrower from this big old robot, because why, of course not, let's go ahead and give it freaking flamethrower. And Zarude sits there and tries to eat up the flamethrower. um it does eat up the flamethrower with its like vine. I need to know the attack that he's actually using, but it's never classified in this movie. But he basically used a big glowing vine whip, and it literally chomps the freaking fire and just eats it. And Zaru just goes in and uses a big old fist with the vines and gives it one crushing blow, and that crushing blow starts and makes everything fuzzy inside of the machine with Zed. Doug?
and we can see that the battle is taking chunk after chunk out of Dada, and you can tell that he's hurt. And um, Coco's like, we need to get you to the spring, um, so you can heal. And it looks like Zed's trying to come down with the final blow, but then the rest of the Zarude join the fight. Ash turns his hat backwards, so you know it's serious, and you know it's serious because there's only fucking 20 minutes left in the movie. Um, and Dada gets down in the spring, and unfortunately, the the water isn't healing. And the elder says when everything was getting monkeyed around with, I think the water source has been corrupted, and um, Dada is trying to kind of come to grips with the situation. He's like, well, I had a good run. And then, obviously, Coco is scrambling, and
And then we go back to the battle, and all the Pokemon are sitting here holding back this damn robot. Ash and Pikachu are using Thunderbolt on the robot, and it's still not really doing too much. And they're like, damn, this machine is strong. How the hell can we beat this thing? And we go back to Coco, and Dada is coming to grips that he's dying now. He's like, if I can't be healed now, I'm getting ready to go away. And he's like, I've wondered for a long time whether I was capable of being a parent or not, but now I know. He's like, now, and Coco's like, no, what? He's like, I'm glad you are my son. He's like, I'm very glad. And he takes his final breath. And it's at this point, Dada does die at this point. And it's pretty sad. We get some flashbacks to some happy moments with Dad giving Coco some life lessons. And he's like, you have to do whatever you can to protect what you love. And Doug, you want to take this next part?
And then we go back to the current timeline, and Coco is trying to use the same attack that Dada used on the Rufflet, and he obviously, well, he shouldn't be able to because he's a people, and but because it is a kids movie, wouldn't you know it if his fucking hands did start to glow and energy came into him, and wouldn't you fucking believe it if it didn't start to work, and
He's like, I am a Zarude. I'm gonna save my dada, and he's like, I can do it. And not only is he doing it, but the Zarude that are around him start helping in as well. With uh, do they? No, no, they don't. Freaking Coco starts healing Zarude all by himself using the power that's within him. And I'm going to chop it up to he was raised by these damn Zarude, so he has some type of inner power in him that that was able to heal his daddy.
yeah.
I know it's a kids movie, but yeah, he does end up healing him. We go back to the battle, and it's at this point that one of the guys in the back, he's like, the robot has a battery pack on its back
Of course it
that,
does.
and the battery pack holds all the power to the robot. If you can destroy that battery pack, then it will destroy the robot, and the robot will stop. It's the whole control system of it. And they're like, why didn't you tell us that shit earlier? And Ash is like, Pikachu, quick attack. And this is where stuff gets into some shit. Freaking one of the Zarude goes in and grabs Pikachu and just starts flinging him all over the place. And then we go back to Dada and Coco. Doug?
And of course, because it's a kids movie, dead as alive, because that's how life works. And
What are we teaching these kids?
yeah, what are we teaching the kids, really, honestly? It's 2021, people. Come on. Um, so then we have a big heartfelt moment, and then we immediately are thrown back into the battle. And Pikachu's riding Flygon, trying to get and he's being flung from Zarude to Zarude, trying to get freaking
To the
to that
battery pack.
exact point, which I feel like they've been fighting long enough. They would have accidentally hit it by now. Um,
Exactly.
and Pikachu's up. He's on the robot, and Ash tells him to use Iron Tail, and he gets knocked out. But then Zarude catches him. It calls him Yellow One, and he
Ash is like, go now.
and he chucks him, and he hits the exact spot that he's needed to hit, and he could have probably hit,
20
20 minutes
times.
ago, and the machine just immediately shuts off, and the researchers who have stood there during this whole battle are cheering, and the doctor isn't there when all the smoke clears, and we see that he's limping and he's staggering, and he's basically like, this is some bullshit. I was right. I will prove that I'm right. I
he's he's like, it's not over until it's over. And we go back and we see
Coco chases after him.
yeah, we see Dada's getting helped out of the water by Dada's getting helped out of the water by Coco and the other Zarude, and Coco sees Zed and he's like, you son of a bitch, and just goes in and flies in. flies in on Zed. Zed is running, and he's like, "I'm gonna catch you." And everyone's looking around. They're like, "Where the hell did he go?" And he's like, "Oh shit, the Elder." And that's what the Alpha is saying in this scene because we're back at the robot. And then from there we go back to the chase with Zed and Coco, and Zed has he has met his match. He has run on this on this tree trunk, and he there's water underneath him, and he can't run anymore. And Coco is running after him, and Coco jumps on his back. Zed throws him down like a asshole. I'm surprised that freaking Coco's back is not broken from that throw. And they're just fighting back and forth. And Dada comes over. He's like, "Coco, that's enough. Stop it now." And they're like, and Ash comes running over. He's like, "What's happening?" He's like, "Oh shit, Coco's in danger." And freaking, they're going back and forth. And Pikachu is like, "Oh no, what's going to happen?" Doug?
Um, yeah, so Zed jumps, and Coco's able to grab him from one of his wrist vines, and Zed wants him to be let go,
He wants to
and
die.
he's like, and Zed and Coco ties the his vine to the end of the log and just kind of leaves him hanging there. And we have this moment, and everybody's happy. And you know, never mind that Zed's still hanging there. And then we fade to black, and we come back, and the music's chipper, and we're 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 doing some digging around the tree, and
Yes.
you know, we see that the researchers are working in harmony with the Pokemon, and
They're replanting the trees that they knocked.
everybody's having a gay old time, and the Zarude are watching all of this, and they seem pleased, and
They're like, "What do you make of this?" And he's like, the elder is like, he's like, "We treated this jungle as if it was our own and rejecting all others." He's like, "And consistently stealing anything that we wanted." He's like, "I compare this to that wicked human and wonder, hmm." He's like, "What's the difference between us and Zed?" And the Pokemon are like, "The jungle belongs to all the Pokemon that live in it." It is what Data ends up saying. And it's at this point, I'm not going to go word for word, but they're like, all the Pokemon and the humans, they work together, and that everybody is the lifeblood of this forest. No one is excluded. And we are a part of that lifeblood. And now the law has taught us that we can all be together as one. And he uses his vine whip and goes down over to Coco, who is planting some plants with Ash Ketchum. Doug?
we see, we see a reunion, and Coco's like, "I'm glad to see that you're feeling better," and um, let's see, and then um, Coco's still kind of weary about the researchers, and he's like gonna go down and muck stuff up, and Dada's like, "No, just let this play out." And Shannon's trying to talk to the Pokemon, and the guy's like, "I don't think they understand." And um,
All the Zarus start using their secret power of making things grow that Dada Zarud had used in the beginning to when they were planting those nuts in the ground.
and we see that the plants are like sprouting up and just growing exponentially, and freaking poor Swovet has a heart attack, and
Squirrel's like, "Oh my gosh, it's working."
everybody's having a good time, and um,
We have a lot of upbeat music that's going on right now. The elder looks over at Coco. He's like, "I wonder if anyone thought this would be our future." He's like, "Look around." He's like, you helped to create a bridge between human and Pokemon. Perhaps no one could have accomplished that but you. And he's like, Coco, you are both human and Zarude. And he's like, therefore, it is my opinion that you possess the heart of both creatures. And it's at this moment that Coco is looking over at his dad, who has taught him everything. And it looks like we kind of get a flash forward to the forest. Basically, there's a bunch of trees still down, but he goes over to where they planted those nuts, and the nuts have grown. Doug?
And and then we go and we see Ash giving his trusty goodbye, and um, Ash and Coco are friends, and Ash says, "Yeah, friends forever." And then
From here, he's like, yeah, friends forever, Pikachu. And he's like, I'll see you again. And
and
he's like,
Dada kind of slinks away, and Coco's like, that's that's something. And then we find Dada back with the pack, and we find out that the elder is prepared to accept Dada and Coco back into the pack, and Coco's like, I would prefer to go out
on my own.
on my own on an adventure. And then Dada kind of snaps. He's like, you did all this work to get accepted back, and you're going to just turn your back on the jungle? And
Coco basically, he says, he's like, I feel like I'm both human and Pokemon, and I can do a lot of good for this world. And freaking Zarude, oh no yawning now. We're almost there. And he's like, I am both human and Pokemon, but I am also your son, and I'm going to put my foot down, and there are things I can do because you raised me. He's like, the same thing you can. This and freaking Dada is like, he's like, this is nonsense. You'll end up running back in tears. And Coco's like, I'll show you. You're wrong. And they
and then
both have a glaring moment.
and then Coco runs off, and Dada has his back turned, but then the alpha walks past him and goes, "Is this what you wanted?" And Dada's like, "Yeah, it's perfect." And
He was testing Coco.
we see Coco run off, and he's got a bag packed, and he said, and then we go back to Dada, and he said, "My son's heading out. You know what to do." And the alpha's like, "Have you seen what I've seen?" And and Dada's like, "Yeah," and it's exactly like Coco said. And then we have a flashback to the fireworks that apparently he doesn't remember. So, and then we see that
You're never gonna let that go.
nope,
And the freaking Pokemon are sitting there training inside, and it seems like there's a secret going on, and all the Pokemon are going around. They're like, all right, it's time, everybody. And freaking Squelvet is up there eating a berry, and he's like, oh shit, it's time. Let's do this. And freaking Coco starts running over to Ash and Pikachu. He catches up to them, and Coco is like, wait a minute. And he trips and his bag opens, and Ash is like, are you all right? And Coco's like, Coco, go too. He's like, you mean on a journey? And then we go back into the jungle, and it looks like all the Zarude are taking a rock, and they're going to fix the spring. So they're fixing the hole that Zed had put into this forest. And mind you, Zed's still hanging in the forest, everybody. So
yeah, I was gonna say I don't think that was That was not resolved.
No, no, it wasn't. It's about to get resolved, but it he's still hanging there, everybody. So it's been some hours. So he's just hanging on a tree branch somewhere. And it's at this point that um that Coco looks inside of his bag and he's like, there's some berries in here. He's like, I didn't put these here. And he's thinking back to his dad. It's the berries that he planted with his dad back in the garden. And all of a sudden the water shoots up from the tree because the Zarude has fixed the fountain. And they look back and Coco sees what his dad has done and sees that even though he's leaving, everything's going to be fine because they fixed the tree and they're all working together. So it's a soft moment and all the Pokemon are working together and Dada's standing at the top of the tree just looking at his son as he's sending him off. And Coco kind of cries. Squovet's having a conniption. He's like, oh my God, this is so sad. And it's a heartfelt moment. And it's at this point that Coco starts running off onto his journey. All the Pokemon are seeing him off, and he's like, I'm a human and I'm going to help all the Pokemon in the world. And then we go. Do you want to go over the Pokemon Center with Team Rocket, Doug?
Uh,
I got it here if you want me
well, no, because we finally get a little bit of an end on the Zed situation
to.
because we um because they found video of the car wreck that killed
Coco's
Coco's parents,
parents.
10 years ago, and we find out that um, Zed's gonna finally be held accountable, and then we see Ash actually initiating the call home, which gives his mom a heart attack. Um,
She's like, you never call me.
kind of like when you leave a message.
I know.
And so then,
We're yawning, everybody, because as we were saying at the beginning of the podcast, it's 12 minutes to midnight, everyone.
yeah. Um, so then, poor Miss Ketchum automatically assumes the worst. She's like, "Did you eat something bad?"
Do you have a fever? Are you okay? Everything all right?
And then we go back to the forest and we find out that everything is absolutely thriving, and
And we
everybody's
finally
lit.
get shiny Celebi.
Yeah, that's literally the last shot of the movie that matters. Well, not really. I mean, because it's flying through the forest, being followed by a Zarude. We see that Shannon is still working peacefully, and we're getting a song, and we finally get a little bit from the narrator, and yeah,
And the elder looks on and he's like, everything must be fine again. And that's basically it. We have a freeze frame um, of Zaru flying through the forest, and then we see Dada's blanket that he's been using, which was Coco's, and it has the symbol of Celebi on the inner part that we never saw on there, and it just um, sits inside of the forest, flying as a flag of symbolism inside of the forest. And we are officially done with the review of Secrets of the Jungle. Doug, we did it.
it's a half hour too long.
I know. But so I do gotta ask you because I mean you've literally watched it twice in one day. Your initial watching it, how did you feel about this movie? After I kind of hyped it up to you a little bit.
It wasn't bad. Um, I mean, I can't go back to that initial airing. I mean,
Oh, I know. But what would you give this movie on your Dougometer?
3 out of 5 if I'm being generous.
Okay. I give it maybe about a 4. I thought it hit almost all the points, and it was kind of a tear jerker in the middle of the movie. So I'm gonna give it about a 4. We have battling. You can literally jump into this movie and not know anything else in regards to any plot lines or stories or anything. It's its own standalone movie, and I really enjoyed it. So. But yeah, that was it. That is the secrets of the jungle. And in just moments, I will be putting this together, and this movie will be premiering in about an hour and a half um, from the time that we are finishing up this recording, Doug. I do have a Pokemon pack in front of me. Should I open it or should I leave that for a different day?
Oh, you might as well open it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go and open it. This is an Evolving Skies booster pack. Let's go ahead and open this. All right. I do got a black card. Might be a dud pack, but let's see if I get some Pokemon cards that I do not have. I have a Dragon Energy, a Digging Gloves, an Eliscue, a Full Face Guard, a Litletto, a Lotad, a Teddiursa, a Cryogano, whatever that is, a Nickit, a Reverse Hollow Stormy Mountains, and my rare is a Lilligant, non-holographic. So no real true hollow in this pack. So there we go. That is the movie. Do you have anything else to add, Doug, before we venture off and get back on schedule next week?
No.
All right, then go ahead and say your goodbye, Doug.
Goodbye, Doug.
And this is Wrestling Chris G telling you that we will be back to our normal programming next week. There will be no Kanto new episode this upcoming Friday. All of that will start back up starting next Tuesday, leading into Friday next week. So have a good night, everybody. It has been real, everybody. It's been long, but I hope you enjoy our review of Pokemon the movie, Secrets of the Jungle. Have a good night, everyone.